This is the iPhone 4S from 2011. This phone, in regards to modern technology, is extremely outdated, and I pulled it out of my drawer, I dusted it off, I upgraded it to a newer version of the operating system, and I've been using it for the last day or two, and these are my thoughts on the iPhone 4S in 2017. So let's start with the software. The software is, let's say, extremely outdated. I'm not going to say slow just because it's kind of what you can come to expect from iOS 9 running on a phone that came from 2011. So it's very outdated in regards to the software can't really handle the hardware in this phone. The phone has the A5 chip, and to put that into some context, the iPhone 7 has the A10 chip. So the phone is 5 chips behind, and it's only running software that is a year old. So I'll let you do the math there. Of course, the software is going to feel very sluggish and outdated when it is this old and running iOS 9. The iPhone 4 is still running iOS 7, and I think the iPhone 4S, the software support for the iPhone 4S, should have stopped somewhere around iOS 8 or even iOS 7. Using this phone day to day on iOS 9 is very sluggish and very slow, and just trying to do basic tasks on this phone, the experience is not fun, and you'll be waiting a long time for basic elements to load on this phone. So let's jump into settings. You can see that the newest software on this phone is iOS 9.3.5. And let's try to do some basic tasks, and I'll show you just how slow the phone is. So let's kill all the apps out of the background here. And let's try to open the App Store. So I open it, you get that white splash screen. It loads the elements down there. And right now it's getting all the web-based content. It's very slow. It loads the background elements, and it's officially loaded. So still not loaded down here. There we go. So it took a very long time to load the App Store, and of course we can give that to the older hardware. It has the older Wi-Fi technology and just the older chip in this phone that isn't capable of running the App Store at the full speed like you'd expect on a newer phone. That's to be expected. Let's try another app. Let's try something a bit less heavy like weather. So that blue splash screen, and then it loads the weather information. It just feels very slow in today's standards. Like when I open weather on my iPhone 7, it's almost instantaneous. So just that second of loading time, if you add that up over months upon months, it seems like you're going to be waiting a long time over time for everything to load. Let's try one more. Let's try the camera. So it's killed in the background. Let's open the camera. You can see that we see that black splash screen before it loads, and that's something you don't see on modern phones today. As soon as you open it, it just opens the camera, and we can attribute that something to the software. Like I said, I don't think this phone should still be running iOS 9. And I wouldn't blame it on the software being slow, because if you're running iOS 9 on your iPhone 6S or iPhone 7, it would still feel very snappy and very fast. It's the hardware on this phone. I think Apple should have done a bit more research and understood that your customers aren't going to be very happy if you put this more modern version of iOS on a phone this old. So let's jump down to the hardware on the iPhone 4S. It has a 3.5-inch 640 by 960 display. It still has that same 326 pixels per inch on the iPhone 7, like the iPhone 7 does. But of course, because it has that tiny display, it's not even at 720p. So not even an HD display, but with that tiny size and that fairly high pixel density, things are still going to look pretty sharp on this display. It does have an 8-megapixel camera. So the camera, when they released it in 2011, was actually pretty state-of-the-art. An 8-megapixel camera on a phone like this, and it recorded 1080p video. People were pretty happy with a camera of that caliber, and I've taken some photos on here, and it looks fairly decent. I mean, the 8-megapixel photos, they're not as crisp, and it's not as good in low light as a photo from the iPhone 7 would be, for example. That's obvious, but for a phone from 2011, I'm pretty impressed with the camera. It still can record 1080p, which is good. So if you're maybe a startup YouTuber who doesn't have a camera and you have an old iPhone 4S lying around, a 1080p video camera on this old phone is definitely something you'd like to have. 512 megabytes of RAM is how much memory this guy has. Definitely not capable of running iOS 9 smoothly with that much memory. When this phone launched on iOS 5, I believe half a gig of RAM was plenty, and Apple always did some great optimization to make it run smoother, but half a gig of RAM on iOS 9 definitely is not up to caliber with some newer smartphones. And finally, the battery size is 1432 milliamp hours. So I've been using this phone for about 2 or 3 hours since I unplugged it today, and it's at 89%. So the battery is decent, and it's kind of what you'd come to expect from an Apple phone. Of course, it's not as good as it would be, for example, on a larger phone like the iPhone 7 Plus, but the battery life is pretty decent. So we've talked about the software and the hardware. Now let's talk about if you own this phone in 2017 and actually want to try to use it, what can you do to try to optimize the software to run smoother? Well, I've done 2 things, and these are the things that I've done to try to speed up this phone. So jump into settings, and the first thing you're going to do, you can see how slow it is there, go back, go into accessibility, and turn on reduce motion. Now what this is going to do is it's going to stop the phone from showing major animations, and pretty much that takes a big weight off the processor's chest, if you will. So the processor only has to focus on doing the task, and it doesn't have to focus on loading those extreme animations that iOS is known for. So turn on reduce motion and you will notice a bit of a speed improvement. The second thing I did, it won't have as big of an impact as reduce motion will, but it's turning off background app refresh. Now, when you're doing a task on your phone, you want your phone to put all the power to the task that you're trying to do, and you don't want it to be updating apps in the background, and that's what this feature will do. I think when Apple put iOS 9 on the iPhone 4S, they should have disabled this feature automatically, because having the apps refresh in the background when you're trying to do something is definitely going to slow it down. So turn this off, and also turn on reduce motion, and the experience of iOS 9 on your iPhone 4S will be a little bit more bearable here. So you can see when I pull down to Notification Center, it's kind of smooth. I can swipe up to Control Center. You can go into Spotlight Search, and the keyboard comes up very smooth. So with those changes, you can see that it's running a bit more smooth, but the phone, like I said, it's from 2011, so you have to do all the optimization you can to try to get this as close to usable as you can. So yeah, this would be a fantastic phone, for example, for your first phone if you're a young kid. If you have 70 or 80 bucks lying around, you can go on Craigslist and you can pick up your first phone. It can also be good for first camera for YouTube. So if you have a newer phone but you still have your older 4S laying around, I mean, it still records 1080p video. So this thing could be a good YouTube camera too. So I mean, some very newish technology in this phone, and it was state of the art when it came out. But do some of the software enhancements like I showed you in this video, and you should be fairly pleased with your experience with your iPhone 4S on iOS 9. So guys, thank you so much for watching. That was my experience with the old iPhone 4S in 2017. Thank you for watching. Drop a big like on this video. Stay tuned for more Apple content. My name is Mike, and I'll see you in the next one.